All right, welcome back, everybody. Back to Real Educators Matter, where learning is the true superpower. Learning, that's the true superpower. Special guest tonight. Um, Love diving into the Black Girl Magic, but I'm gonna let her introduce with the who, the what, and the where. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paula Bethea. I am a principal in Trenton, New Jersey. I have been a principal since for 15 years, actually at the school that I attended as a child. I've been in the district that I'm in for 24 years, but been an educator actually since I left college. I started my work as a preschool teacher and then moved on to a charter school and then to where I am now in Trenton in 2001. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. A lot of times, what we say to, troops or people who've been in the
Hmm.
military, thank you for your service.
Thank
But I
you.
think it is somewhat fitting for that as well for folks who've been in this work for so long,
Yes.
especially those who in it. We know what the grind can be. It can
Yes.
be very thankless at times. So we appreciate the time that you've already given of yourself in service for others to learn and grow.
Thank you.
What got you into education? Why education for you?
So as I stated, I attended Rutgers University where I majored in Africana Studies and minored in sociology. And I kept saying, I want to be a sociologist. What that meant, I don't know. But
Hmm.
upon graduating, I worked in a group home for teenage moms part time, but I also worked in a preschool in Trenton. And while there, I met a young lady who told me about a graduate education program at Rider University that I could apply to where I can get my certification. So that was my first step, getting my certification as a teacher. Um, did the coursework, student teaching, took of course, my praxis and passed. And my first teaching job was at a charter school, one of the largest charter schools in Trenton at the time. And from there, I just kept being told that I would be a great leader. I was a reading coach, actually a reading facilitator, as they call it. So part of the time I was in the classroom, and part of the time I was out in other classrooms supporting reading. I became a reading trainer, and I was also traveling. This charter school was also ran by a business called as Edison Schools that gave people the opportunity to not only teach in a classroom but also to travel to other schools and train and come back and train staff in your own school. So that's when the leadership bug bit me. And then I just kept going. I obtained my master's in curriculum instruction and supervision. And then I said, I might as well just keep going. And then I just matriculated into their educational administration program where I became certified as sorry, principal or administrator in the state of New Jersey, supervisor then and principal.
Right. So what keeps you in the work? Because I'm in education too, so I know it's not the money.
So I I had a day today where we actually had a hip hop 80s hip hop day. We dressed hip hop. I actually changed my outfit. I had a windbreaker on that was colorful. I said, should I wear it? I was like, no, I'll
Yeah, you
keep,
should have kept that. You should have kept the
semi-professional. That's what I
vibe.
was thinking when I was thinking about what I should keep on. And it was just such an awesome day. We had visitors from young audiences. Sorry if there's noise in the background. Young
It's all good.
audiences. Do you hear any noise in the background? Okay. From young audiences, their hip hop fundamentals. I am a child of hip hop from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Staff dressed, some of the students dressed. And one of the gentlemen performers came to me and said, I love that you were involved in it, engaged, dancing, whatever it was. And I said, I would love to run a school where hip hop was the curriculum and we just taught school from hip hop and history and movement and just beating the odds. And he said, I'm going to do that someday. And I think that's what it hit me, that what we do really, really matters, that every piece of us can be be a light for children, be a light for others, and encourage other people to do something different and really, really affect change. And to be an administrator, which I even heard today, I would not want your job. And I said, when people say that, I understand. I said, but I want my job. And I do have a type of position that I work with the community. I work with parents, leadership in the district, children, staff. You get a little piece of everything. So that's the joys of the job for me, is to
Yeah,
be able to touch lives in many different ways.
indeed. So you, having been in this work for some time, you recognize
Mhm.
the demographics of folks of color who are actual teachers,
Yes.
and that is like a fraction of a percent when you start to speak about administrators. And
Yeah.
so, what are your thoughts on that with your longevity? Is it something you feel a level of responsibility? Do you take it as a badge of honor? Like, what are your thoughts around that, being a woman of color in your administrative role?
Being a woman of color, I've really someone said a long time ago, many of us are often placed in the toughest schools. Um, when I look and speak to other people who are colleagues, whether it's in district or other places, we are on 100 almost all day as soon as you wake up, sometimes even at night.
Yeah,
And I know a lot of people talk about the glass ceiling and breaking the glass ceiling. And are there things that women have to show and prove a lot in this role? Yes, we do. Um, Sometimes we're even told, we're too emotional or too harsh or too strong, when really we are passionate, we are forgiving. We are strong minded and strong willed. And we want for every child that our parents wanted for us. So it can be a double edged sword for a woman of color who just shows up and who you are. And sometimes people don't understand that. And that's why I hear a lot from my colleagues and friends who are still in or formerly were in this role.
yeah, for sure. Do you have children like in school, like school age?
I have a 22-year-old daughter. That's why I was asking, do you hear noise? So
Yeah,
she is a college student right now, majoring in
hmm,
political science.
that's awesome.
She is the joy of my life. She keeps me grounded. And being her mother is one of my greatest gifts. And we learn from each other. She keeps me hip to the newest things, and I hope I lead by example for her. So
True
yeah, it's
indeed.
my one and only. But of course, I
Yeah,
have 500 children every day too, Monday through
right, right.
Friday.
The reason I asked is because I wanted to know, was there any parts of your teaching career where you didn't have children versus when you did? And what
Yes,
did you see were some of the differences? What were similarities? What did you learn?
yes.
May have changed for you in education being a parent versus not?
Yes, so I did not have my daughter until I was 30. So I definitely my beginning years in education, whether it was preschool, my first years of teaching, I did not have a child yet, although I worked with many children. I had nieces and nephews and the like. And becoming a mother just really solidified what I did, taking what I learned. But someone also said to me, who was also a mother and an administrator, she said to me, make sure you don't let this job take over being a mom. And I really, really tried very, very hard, whether it was trying to be at her first days of school, even when my first day of school might have clashed. When I was home, I might be tired, but she had events at school, such as back to school night, or when she won awards for Student of the Month. Um, Being there for her when she needed help with homework or projects. So as she grew up, she never thought that I would choose the job over her. There were times she came to school with me. My daughter very much grew up in school with me. Even in the beginning, before we moved to where we moved for her kindergarten, she actually attended the same district where I worked. So she started her beginnings in Trenton until we moved to the Burlington area and then came back this way. So I always made sure that whatever I wanted for my own daughter is what I want for all of the children that I worked with throughout my career.
Do you feel like there's was a difference in your approach to the work when you became a mom versus prior? So I know that sometimes there's a
Hmm.
little bit of a debate of like, there's
Hmm.
teachers and educators who don't are not parents,
Right,
and some who are parents, and actually some parents of students
right,
feel that there's a disconnect at times with those folks versus those
right.
who do have parents. But I know, having worked in the system for a while, there are some
Hmm.
people who are parents that are really good teachers and who are
Right,
not. So just
right.
wanted to know what your thoughts were in terms of you and your approach, especially now as a principal. I'm sure you have
Hmm.
some teachers and educators who are parents and who aren't.
Hmm.
Is there a difference in the two? Is it better? Is it worse? Like, what has
Hmm.
been your experience?
My experience has been it's funny, it's like it's you're on the job training but while you're also being a parent. So I've almost every I think step I've had, either when I was teaching or even an administrator, my daughter, either I had worked with the same age of children that were the same age as my daughter.
Hmm.
So it made me understand a little bit more, be grateful what I could provide her, especially when I had families that couldn't provide for their children. And like I said, she would come to work with me because I want her to understand that although we were, let's say, in some ways privileged to live, where we lived at the time, there were some children that didn't have privilege, but you were no better than them, and they were no worse off than you. Every child deserves an education. Every child deserves someone who cares about them. And I also have a very strong unit of friends, from Rutgers all the way through my career, who became second mothers to her and still are. Whether it's, I'm the person you can call if you think mama doesn't understand, or spending time with her, or, she has many mothers and aunts that are still in her life, um, that along the whole way, I never was alone. And definitely my family, my mother, my cousins and I all had children at the same age. So they're all, her first cousin and her second cousins are all 22. So they went through everything together, including
Hmm.
elementary, middle, and high school. So no matter where you turned or where I turned, I always had a person to lean on, whether it was educators in my life who had children already, and they were more my mentors because they were older than me, such as some of my supervisors when I was a vice principal. So they gave me a lot of advice, to really, again, hone in on how I am as a parent. So I never ever felt like I had to make a choice. And if I did, there was always somebody to catch me if I felt that, I can't be here, but you can't hear. And I'm also married. I've been married 25 years. So my husband very much is involved in our daughter's life, and we both did what we could to be great parents to her and still are.
Awesome. What is your philosophy on suspensions?
So our district has taken a strong stance against suspensions because there was a lot of course, theory behind suspensions, and then right before COVID, looking at ACEs and SCL, and I think when I was early in an administrative role, I really started to look at how truly life happens to our children. And I always say to people, when we're not feeling good or we're not doing well, we can call out. Our children can't call out. So there are times that there are things that warrant a suspension, but we are really, really working hard on, I call it unpeeling the onion. Why children make decisions that they make, why they do the things they do. And as we are to unpeel that and unpack that, just like you have to unpack the standards, you have
Hmm.
to unpack what's going on in a child's life. And um, at times, yes, you have to issue a consequence, but there are layers to that now. So we are trying to very, very hard, and our suspension rates have diminished greatly. And it takes a lot of culture shift in our communities, whether it's families, staff, a lot of professional development on looking at things other than suspension and really working with your support staff to help to see what we can do to help children as well as community resources. So I know there are people say, oh, they're not suspending enough or they're suspending too much. But we're probably down in the single digits in our schools across the district because there was it was a high rate, especially in of course, our tougher schools per se. But there are times that you have to issue consequences as long as the child understands and you get the truth out of what happened, and both the child and the parent understands that there are policies and procedures, and of course our code of conduct that we go by. But it's multi-layered now. I was actually on the code of conduct committee when we rewrote it a few years ago. So it looks more at, of course, social emotional learning, restorative programming, things of that nature to work with children around what their needs are rather against what they don't have.
Yeah. Do you think that suspensions are effective?
Um, Not really. In some cases, there's a student who has some concerns and that I could think of, and going home wasn't the answer because that's where a lot of the things lie.
Yeah.
Lie. But in school, we have several mentors. We have a male mentor who's actually not an employee, but has a contract with our school that works with the young men and some of the young females that they can talk to outside of me or a teacher or a parent. We
Yeah.
have a great school counselor. We have a great SAC counselor. I believe everybody's a teacher in the building. Safety officers, security officers, our custodian has a great relationship with our kids. So anybody that the child can connect with, and there's research behind checking in on children and seeing what's going on. And every morning I stand in the morning and I play music and I watch faces and I feel
Yeah.
vibes to make sure that kids are okay. And if they're not okay, I check in on them or ask someone, can you just take this person to the side while I open up the building because he or she isn't having a good morning.
Yeah.
And that alone can change things.
For sure.
Hmm.
What is your thoughts or philosophy on retention? Students being retained.
I do not believe in it. Um, in early years, if there is a a strong case for it, there really should be wraparound services around why a child isn't grasping certain concepts. Usually, it's around basic skills, early reading or writing, because in K3, you're learning to read, and four on up, you're reading to learn. And where is the break? What happened when it broke? So we actually have several kind of, I would say, systems like a net to catch what's going on. We have a hope team, which looks at students and behaviors that are occurring early. We also have in our school district care team, which is a team that looks at absenteeism, which, as you
Right.
know, is a hot topic in New Jersey, especially after COVID. So there
Yeah.
are MTSS, multi systems that you have to look at. And then when children get older, there is research behind retention and dropout. When you watch your friends pass on, and I've seen data even where children are struggling and you put them in a higher level or increase the rigor of the lesson, and they could rise to the occasion. What child don't you know who's into video games sits there and will play and play and play that video game until they beat the video game? I know
Right.
many. I'm sure you do too. It's the same
Absolutely.
concept. And
Yeah.
then I'd like to rethink education, and I'll move on to, why can't the first couple of hours be all about the ELA and the math integrated with science and social studies, but the rest of the afternoon we have children doing career exploration or things that they enjoy doing, so that even if you aren't the academic, if you're the musician, if you're technology, if you're the artist, you can find, if you're culinary, you can find something that doesn't always mean the college track or some
Yeah.
other educational track. And I think
For
if we
sure.
looked at education and formed it differently, we would see a different thought about retention and things of that nature.
True indeed. What's your thoughts on standardized testing?
So I don't know if anybody remembers, or if you remember, there was either, I think it was on, maybe it was on Different Strokes, when Arnold, one of them had to take a test. And one of the questions was to identify a saucer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he didn't know what a saucer was, because we know, because of our cultural backgrounds, maybe, that the saucer is the little plate you put the teacup on. But he
Right.
didn't know because he had never been to a saucer. And I remember that episode so well. And that's what I think about standardized testing. Do
Got you.
we have to do it? Definitely. Is it standard across the board? No, it isn't. And I
Right.
just read another little quip on a principal's blog where it talked about standardized testing in the areas of mathematics, where our children can go to the store with $1 and walk out with some chips, some candy, and the whole nine, and know exactly what they have to spend. But for some reason, when they have to see that word problem, but if I'm having reading skills and I see a math problem, I can pull out the math, but the reading skill is tough.
Right.
So then curriculum companies, are they creating curriculum to address that? Or are they still creating curriculum to have our children, particularly in our urban areas, struggle with that? So I know it has to happen, and I know I have an obligation to make it happen with all fairness and sincerity. But there are more than one way. There's more than one way to look at our children, and it's not just on standardized testing.
Right. What's your thoughts on SPED, students with IEPs? Just, I mean, I know it's a big topic, but just
It's a
general,
huge
in general,
topic.
what are your
It's a
thoughts?
huge topic. Um, there are needs that many of our children have. Um, that a specific intervention or a specific reading program curriculum just can't meet. There are individuals who are trained to work with our children across the board. If you don't know, New Jersey is a state that does a lot of accommodations and modifications for children with special needs. We are a district, just as many urban district, that has a high number of our students, especially Black and brown boys, that are disproportionately identified. However, I'm going to go again to talk about how we do education. When a child is say pull out
Hmm.
or pulled out for a resource, but the rest of the class is getting the general core curriculum. My thoughts are that child should actually be with that class to get the core curriculum, while a teacher pushes in to support that child or support other children who may also have the deficiency in whatever areas. That's just my thoughts. I know that doesn't work with everyone, but I've
Yeah.
shared my thoughts publicly, even with my supervisors, about whether it be inclusion or even self-contained. Are there sometimes where there needs to be children in the self-contained class to just get that added support? Yes, but there is also a need for them to be integrated with everyone, because when we go to work, we don't know who had an IEP or who didn't,
Right.
do we? We don't know
Some of them,
who
some of them
may
we
have
might,
not or
though.
didn't. We might, but we
We might.
don't. So you're
Yeah,
going to
true
work
indeed.
with people all your life who will come from all different backgrounds
Yeah,
and understandings and non-understandings. So that's something that we have to think about when we're educating our children as well.
yeah. Think back to when you were a student versus
Hmm.
now. What do you think has improved,
Hmm.
and what do you think is missing?
So I've had two different experiences. So this is my interesting fact. So my school years began in Trenton Public Schools, K to 4, and then a teacher I had told my mother about a private school in Princeton Day School. My mother had we took the I took the test and I was able to go. So I started my years in public school from K to 4, and went to private school from 5th to 12th.
Hmm.
So I really have the background of two very, very different um, environments. What I found is what we offer in our district can be just as good as what we offer in a private institution. What I discovered when I went to a private institution is that there weren't a lot of people that looked like me, but there were a lot of people who embraced me, and there were some people who didn't. Um, I had to have very tough skin. There were a lot of things that I didn't even tell my mother that I went through at the school. So my own education was very well rounded, but going to a school that most of the people didn't look like me made me choose Africana Studies as a major at
Right.
Rutgers. My mom who's Jamaican, what you gonna do with a major like that? I don't know,
Right.
mommy, but there's something I need to learn about myself before I enter this world. So I am very fortunate to have had that major at Rutgers. Now, we some of those classes, it was like party
Indeed.
time. But to
Indeed.
have Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Busia, who's the sister of the main character from The Color Purple, teach us about the
Hmm.
color purple, to
Yeah.
live in the Africana house,
Right.
to meet Sister Soldier and
Dr. Bethea.
at the time, and if you remember when Malcolm X's widow, Dr. Betty Shabazz, came to speak to us.
Hmm.
Man, that was a time at Rutgers. That was a
Sure
time.
thing.
And to be a part of Boabu, who was the sister to 100 Black Men. I got my education at Rutgers,
Right.
and people say all the time, but it wasn't an HBCU. But if you ever go to a Rutgers homecoming, oh, we really feel we went to a HBCU, and I'm
For
very,
sure.
very fortunate to have that background, those women, those brothers who really helped me. If you remember the basketball game when we sat on the gym floor,
Yeah.
remember that game? My
Protest.
mom
Hmm.
said, "Are you crazy? Are you crazy?" And
Yeah.
when our president made a comment about the Bell's curve,
Right.
and we went to college in New Jersey and all over, and we stood on those steps and we shouted out. So my education is very well rounded, very rooted in who I am, and my roots are Jamaican. I'm the first person in my family born in America, so I also have my Caribbean roots. So that's a
Hmm.
lot of education. That's nothing but teaching from two
Right.
parents who never went beyond the eighth grade education. I'm
Yeah.
still learning about who I am.
Yeah.
So my
Sure.
education never stops, put it that way.
Yeah. Now having been an administrator, what's one of the biggest pain points for you? Like what's like,
My
gets under your
biggest
skin.
pain point is when we are working with a child and working with a child and we can't see change, and sometimes we know what the issue is and we know what the problem is, but we just can't get to it for various reasons, and you just want to love them till they love themselves.
Yeah.
And you want to, I mean, I talk real talk with my students about what's out there. And I have 4th to 6th grade. I've had up to, I used to work with middle schoolers,
Hmm.
and I've had students that have been murdered. I have students that are no longer here. I go on the newspaper, I might see a former student, or and I have students who have changed their lives. Luckily, we work with a company now who places substitutes in our schools. And right
Hmm.
now, I have 4 former students who are either one-to-ones, one that's worked as a secretary, and one that's as a substitute teacher. And when they
Wow.
say, Miss Bethea, these kids, I said, well, you were these kids
Right.
10 or
Right.
15, 10 years ago. So
Right.
there is a hope that our kids get to see the light that's ahead of them before they see the dark. And right now, a lot of our kids are in the dark, and it's
Hmm.
not their fault. It's really not
Yeah.
their fault.
Yeah.
So that's what pains me. And I had to learn through almost really becoming ill that I can't absorb it all, because it would
Hmm.
literally not allow you to sleep at night,
Yeah.
worried about our children.
Right. Well, let's dream for a minute. If you could build
Yes. Mhm.
the perfect school with all the things, all the trimmings, you could wave your magic wand. What would it look like?
Yes. So it definitely would be what I spoke about earlier, a place where you have to get your academics. That's a given. Um, you have a little bit more choice, and that's what was unique about my 5th to 12th grade school. From 5th grade, I was able to select what classes I wanted to take.
Hmm.
Um, You don't have that in a lot of our public schools. A curriculum that I would love to see kids taking hip hop and history. I've had a dream about a course like that for so long.
Mm-hmm.
How you can compare music, how music inform the times, or did the times inform the music. I've actually
Mm-hmm.
did presentations like that from a former superintendent who did such a presentation with my kids. I do it for Black History Month and a couple of kids
Mm-hmm.
classes to talk about um, songs that I grew up on that are
Mm-hmm.
relevant today.
Right.
Um, and if you ever heard of James Comer, he did the Comer model where all of the relevant social services that families need would be in a school. So you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to go all the way across town to get help with your rent or help or getting food. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which are shelter, safety, all those things would be right there in a school building.
Right.
And of course, the building has to be immaculate. The children should come in. So I have the fortune. I'm fortunate enough to be in a building that was rebuilt in 2006, which of course, now it's 20 years old, but it is really a new school. We have the
Mm-hmm.
latest in technology. We have science labs. We have 3 computer labs. Every child has an iPad. And I'm just not saying that, because you have to have a mix of technology and, of course, good books, but every child
Yeah.
should be able to walk into a big, bright, beautiful building that's clean and represented, and where they know that they can thrive. The first 5 minutes that you're in that school, that I imagine, will be a school that they love me here and they want me to be great.
Awesome. Where you see yourself in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
So, my good friends and some of my staff know I've been talking that R word.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have some other talents. I've been a presenter on the very same thing that I talked about, cultural relevancy in the classroom. I've done work where I once hosted a young women's conference for young women in South Jersey. So I don't want to become stagnant, but I
Mm-hmm.
do want some change. And I think it's time for a new regime. They call us the OGs in our district now. I never thought I would be
UND.
called that. But I still have some energies. I still have some
Yeah.
energy. And I don't want to leave bitter, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to leave upset. I want to leave whatever legacy I leave. I want to leave it on a good note, and I want to be able to walk away with my head held high saying that I made a difference. And I know that's a cliche, but that's really how I want to exit. And that's going to be probably in the next 5 year span.
What's one of the things you once said about your legacy? If they ask about Miss Paula, what did she leave? What was her what was part of her legacy?
So I spoke to a friend today that's been covering, well, not a friend who's helping me cover a school, and this is her first week spending. And I said, "What do you think?" She said, "The culture of this building is amazing." And she said, "The students are happy. They know that they're cared about. They know there's tough love, and the staff speak the same language." That is
That's awesome.
not something that's easy to build.
No.
We've been up and down many roads, and we've had some wins and some losses. Our scores aren't through the roof, but our love for each other is through the roof, and our care for each other is through the roof.
That's
And hopefully that's the legacy that I'm leaving.
that's
That
beautiful.
I did good school.
I'll
Thank
leave
you.
you on this question here.
Yes.
What message do you have for someone who's either they maybe just entering into education,
Hmm.
or they've been in the grind for a minute, they're feeling discouraged, or
Hmm.
just trying to see where they see themselves in terms of longevity, trying to, whether they're balancing being burnt out, or dealing
Hmm.
with parents who can be challenging, or just all the things that come with, the hurdles of the work. What would your message be?
So I had to learn this the hard way, but I had to learn it about bringing it home with you. You have to learn to separate the two. Of course, there are things, some decisions you may have to make over the evening. Something may happen that you find out in the morning and you're on go as soon as you get in. But I've learned to put down my pad or my technology down at night, and it took me a long time to do that. Um, if it's gonna get done, it's gonna get done when I'm at work. And if there's some things I have to do, just as like typing up observations or things like that, but I'm doing it with a clear mind and a conscience. And I love good television. I love a good Netflix old movie or a good series or something to make me think. And I love being with my friends. I have a great circle, several circles of friends. I joined
Yeah.
a wonderful organization this year, Swing Five Swing Social Fellowship Incorporated. Shout out to Swing.
Hmm.
And I never thought I would join an organization at 52 years old, but I did. And it's been a wonderful journey for me. And I'm opening myself to meeting new people and learning new things and being more of a community, part of the community instead of just outside of the community.
Yeah.
So I do have some plans that way. So I would tell the person to be well grounded. And like I said, don't push away your family and your loved ones for this career because
Right.
you can be aligned on a board agenda the very next week, whether you're here or
That's
not.
100% on that. Well,
Mhm.
listen, Miss Paul, I appreciate you making time.
Thank
I know you're
you.
extremely busy.
Thank you.
Again, as I said in the beginning, you're doing the Lord's work,
Thank
and
you. Thank you.
this podcast is Real Educators Matter, and you in
Thank
fact
you.
do matter, and we appreciate everything that you've been doing and that you
Thank you so
continue to
much.
do.
Thank
All
you. I had a
right,
great time. Great
for
time.
sure.
Thank you. Good luck with everything. Take care.